The first time it happened, she didn't feel it. That's the danger with spiritual theft. It doesn't come with a bang. It comes with a whisper, a slow drain, a gentle tug at the core of your soul, like someone sipping from your cup when you're too distracted to notice the weight lightening. Her name was Zara, and Zara was one of those people who radiated warmth. People gravitated to her, without knowing why. She had a calming voice, a listening heart, and a strength wrapped in softness. She made others feel seen. And like most people with kind spirits, she never suspected that kindness could be preyed upon. But God sees what you don't. She worked in a modest publishing house, tucked away in a city that was always in a rush. Zara wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She just did her work with diligence, smiled when others frowned, and gave more than she ever asked for in return. What no one around her knew, what even she didn't fully realize, was that her soul had a taste to it, a divine flavor, shaped by her intentions, her silent prayers, and the tears she cried when no one watched. That's what made her a target. Some people don't crave your money. They don't crave your success. They crave your peace. They crave your light. And sometimes they taste it in secret. It started with small things. Zara began feeling exhausted in ways that sleep couldn't fix. She'd come home and collapse into bed, drained not just physically but spiritually. She assumed it was the stress, the long work hours, maybe even just the phase of life she was in. But it wasn't life. It was theft. And the thief? They didn't wear a mask. They didn't come with fangs or claws. They came with compliments, with concern, with subtle, needy energy. They smiled in meetings and lingered by her desk. They were the ones who constantly sought her opinion, her reassurance, her ear. There was one in particular, Mira. She had joined the office just 3 months ago. Young, smart, and seemingly harmless. But there was something beneath her surface, a quiet envy wrapped in pretend admiration. Zara had welcomed her with warmth, the way she always did. But she didn't see how Mira's eyes followed her, studied her, mirrored her. It was one conversation that changed everything. "I just love your vibe," Mira had said, brushing her hair back. "There's something about you. You make things feel calm. I don't know what it is. I wish I had that." Zara smiled, grateful, but something about that line lingered in her head for days. I wish I had that. That's the moment Mira had tasted her. You see, some people don't just admire your peace. They want it for themselves. And when they don't know how to grow it within, they try to steal it from others. Silently, spiritually, through emotional hooks, fake vulnerability, and dependency that drains. And Zara began to feel it more intensely. At night, she would wake up with a racing heart, even though nothing was wrong. Her prayers felt blocked, like her words reached the ceiling and fell back down. Her dreams became heavy, filled with strange images. A recurring one stood out, a figure standing at the end of her bed, silently watching her, sipping from a silver cup. She told herself it was just stress, that she was overthinking. But God says, "When I warn you through dreams, listen with your spirit, not your logic." Then came the breaking point. One evening, she went to a quiet cafe to journal, a ritual she used to love. It was her sanctuary. But as she opened her notebook, nothing came. Her mind was a void. Her heart felt numb, like someone had dipped into the well and left it dry. And suddenly, her hand began to shake. Zara looked around. She saw nothing but strangers. Yet in the corner of the cafe, someone stared. Mira, not by coincidence. It hit Zara then. This was no normal coworker dynamic. Mira wasn't just needy. She was feeding. Every moment of emotional oversharing, every compliment that was laced with envy, every time she vented to Zara and left feeling better while Zara felt worse. It was a siphoning. Zara had been spiritually tasted, sampled like a dish on display, and she never even noticed. The truth is, energy is a currency, and people who haven't learned to build their own peace will leech off those who have. Not everyone clapping for you is clapping out of love. Some clap because they want closer access. To consume you. That night, Zara went home and fell to her knees. She didn't beg for relief. She didn't ask for revenge. She whispered a prayer from her soul. God, if someone is feeding off me in silence, reveal them. If I've been too open, too trusting, too blind, show me. Protect my spirit. Seal my peace. What happened next wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet. A wind brushed through her curtains. The candle she hadn't lit flickered once and settled. A warmth passed over her, and she felt it deep in her chest, a divine reassurance. God had heard. The days that followed were different. Mira suddenly began avoiding her. She no longer lingered by her desk. She grew cold, distant, and soon she resigned with no explanation, as if something had exposed her, as if the feast she had been secretly dining on had been taken away. But that wasn't the end, because Zara realized something powerful. It wasn't just Mira. There were others in her life, in her past, in her circle, people who had tasted her goodness in secret, left their prints on her soul, and walked away like they were entitled to it. She saw it now. The friend who only called when life got dark. The relative who always smiled but never supported. The lover who said, "You calm me," but never asked what calmed her. She had been tasted, and it wasn't flattering. It was invasive. It was sacred theft. But here's the beauty of being divinely chosen. God allows people to taste you not to break you, but to teach you discernment, boundaries, protection. He lets your soul be sipped so you'll learn to seal your cup, not with walls, but with wisdom. And Zara did. She began to guard her energy, not by becoming cold, but by becoming conscious. She learned to say no, to recognize emotional parasites, to pray over her spirit before every conversation. She stopped overgiving. And most importantly, she stopped blaming herself for not seeing it sooner. Because now she saw everything clearly. And in that clarity, she found strength. But the story isn't over. Because when you begin to reclaim your peace, those who once fed on it, they notice. And they don't let go easily. Some return. Some retaliate. Some try again. What happens when Zara's light begins to glow even brighter? What happens when the ones who secretly tasted her come back for more? There's a strange silence that comes after awakening. Zara had felt it, like stepping out of a dense fog, only to realize how long you've been surrounded. Her life suddenly looked different. Faces once familiar now seemed foreign. Conversations she thought were meaningful now sounded rehearsed. And yet, her soul was lighter, because God had exposed what was once hidden. But peace, real peace, isn't passive. It's protected. And what you protect, others often want back. 3 weeks after Mira's sudden resignation, Zara had returned to her rhythm. Morning prayers, journaling, clean boundaries. She wasn't the same woman who quietly allowed emotional thieves into her space. She'd become alert, empowered, and most of all, covered. But light attracts moths, and healed energy calls out to the desperate. That's when the phone call came. It was an unknown number, but the voice was not. "Hey, Zara, it's Mira. I don't know why I'm calling. I've been thinking about you." The voice was softer, more uncertain than before. "Things haven't been great. Honestly, I'm struggling. I miss our talks. You always made things feel manageable." Zara listened in silence, not out of cruelty, out of clarity, because this wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. It was thirst. Mira had tasted peace, and now, without it, she was parched. But the difference was Zara had rebuilt her well, and this time it was guarded by discernment. "I hope you find your own peace, Mira," Zara replied calmly. "But I'm not your source anymore." Click. It was one of the hardest things she'd ever done. Not because she missed Mira, but because she no longer needed to please the world to validate her worth. That night, she wrote in her journal, "They will return. But I am no longer serving from an open cup. My soul belongs to God first. I give what He allows, and I hold what He protects. This is spiritual warfare, and I am not afraid." But the spiritual attacks didn't stop with a phone call. They intensified. Zara began noticing strange feelings again. Restlessness at night. Unsettled energy around her apartment. Flickering lights. Cold shivers. The scent of burnt roses in the hallway. Faint but sharp. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. She went to her prayer mat, not with fear, but with fire in her heart. She whispered, God, someone's trying again, but I am yours. Cloak me in what no enemy can taste. Place angels at my door. Let no one sip what you have sealed. And then she did something radical. She fasted for 7 days, not from food, but from soul exposure. No deep conversations, no venting, no emotional exchanges with those who hadn't earned it. She fasted from being too accessible. And on the 7th day, something broke. She dreamed of a banquet, a long table filled with dishes of light, bowls of kindness, plates of wisdom, cups of empathy. Seated around it were people with no faces. They were eating eagerly, greedily, until a hand, divine, radiant, swept across the table and removed Zara's portion. Not for them. The voice said, this one is set apart. She woke up in tears, not of sadness, of release. She realized then she had been marked by God, set apart. Not everyone could access her essence anymore, and not everyone deserved to. But there was one more chapter yet to unfold. One day, at a small bookstore she often visited, she met someone new, a woman named Alina, soft-spoken, kind, seemingly ordinary. They struck up conversation over a book of poetry. It felt organic, warm. But Zara had learned, trust is no longer free. As the weeks passed, Alina began confiding in her, sharing spiritual struggles, personal trauma. Zara offered words, but no emotional currency. And that's when Alina grew impatient. You don't open up much, do you? She asked one afternoon. Zara smiled gently. Not everyone should be allowed into sacred spaces. Alina's smile faltered. There was again that flicker of frustration. Zara felt it instantly, the subtle hunger, the desire to sip. But this time she didn't flinch. She prayed silently in that moment, sealing her spirit once more. God, let no hidden appetite feast on what is yours. Let no counterfeit connection breach the fortress you've built within me. That night, she saw Alina in a dream, standing at a door, knocking with urgency. Behind the door was a blinding light, Zara's inner self. But no matter how loud Alina knocked, the door never opened. When she awoke, she felt it. God had reinforced the lock. It became clearer every day. Some people are drawn to you not for who you are, but for what they lack. They see your peace and want it. They see your joy and mimic it. They see your soul and believe they're entitled to sip it. But here's the truth. You're not a free buffet. You are a sacred offering. And God decides who sits at your table. Zara had learned the art of divine boundaries. She didn't build walls. She built gates. Gates guarded by prayer, wisdom, and God's voice. And then something powerful happened. She began attracting people who didn't want to taste her. They wanted to grow with her. People who brought their own peace, their own cups. People who didn't just take, but poured back. One of them was Idris, a teacher, soft-spoken, kind. He never tried to sip from her soul. He offered his own. One evening, over coffee, he said something that stayed with her. You carry something rare, Zara, but I don't want to consume it. I want to protect it with you. She smiled, because she knew this was different. Not everyone who admires your light is trying to steal it, but you must go through the fire to learn the difference. In the months that followed, Zara's life shifted. She was more selective, more joyful, more aligned, and those who once tasted her, they watched from a distance, thirsty, uninvited, unable to enter what God had sealed. Because when God covers you, no spiritual thief can reach you. No emotional manipulator can fool you. No fake friend can sip what now belongs to heaven. So if you've ever felt drained without knowing why, if you've ever carried pain that didn't feel like your own, if your light dimmed in the presence of certain people, maybe someone secretly tasted you. But now you know, and now you rise. Cover your soul in prayer. Protect your peace with wisdom. Seal your heart with God's fire, because the right ones won't need to taste you. They'll be full enough to walk beside you. And to the ones who tried, let them starve. Let them watch. Let them learn. That light, once stolen, can be reclaimed, and peace, once leaked, can be sealed again. Because God says, "This one is mine, untouchable, anointed,